Oh. All right, the fumes have come from eternity. Let's not do that. Well, but an incredible adventure awaits us, friends. Something we've been preparing for a long time, and we can't wait to share it with you. And actually, right here in this new show, we will explore and dive into the minds of some of the greatest figures in history. Today, the first episode is iconic, fateful, words I don't usually use. Does it matter? When we talk about this person, we can use any word and it will probably turn out to be true. But let's start from the very beginning, before I announce the start of our new adventure, which is called Minds from Eternity. Well, you are welcome to visit us. Thank you once again for following everything we do, and I am sure that with this new series, together we will contribute even more to the development of everything that is. Make yourself comfortable, grab some coffee, popcorn, something to eat, because I won't let you rest. Because we're going to dive in for a long time and the episodes and shows won't be short. I'm emphasizing that. There will be short moments and clips on the other channels, but not here. The idea is to make a journey, a film for each one of these minds from eternity, who have remained and will always remain through time. To remain, to be, and to know that all of this is summed up in such a series, in such a film, and whenever we feel the need for inspiration, for a different point of view, and to explore their vast minds, we can always return, enter, and experience it again. Cheers and enjoy watching! Let's start from the very beginning. What do we know about the life of Leonardo da Vinci? Or more precisely, what do we think we know about Leonardo? Leonardo, that's a name that resonates in the echoes of history, not only as an artist, but also as a visionary whose genius transcended the boundaries of his time. But beyond the enigmatic smile of the Mona Lisa and the multi-layered coded Last Supper, there is a Leonardo who is not fully known to the world. Leonardo da Vinci literally means Leonardo from the town of Vinci, Italy, born on April 15th, 1452. Leonardo is thought to have been the illegitimate son of a Vinci nobleman and entrepreneur, and his mother was a peasant named Caterina. Caterina was only 15 years old when she was seduced by this wealthy Florentine notary named Piero. Their relationship was brief, and after the birth of Da Vinci, his father married another woman. He spent the first years of his life with his mother, but after that his father took over caring for him. Contrary to expectations, he spent quite a lot of time in Florence and later moved there to live. At that time, Florence was a center of cultural awakening. It was a time when, as we know, man with his spirit and mind was inspired and came into the light to conquer new heights of creativity, knowledge, and above all, spirituality. Let's get back to the topic. Who is Leonardo's mother? Why do we know so little about her? And since we have such an extraordinary person, it's only logical to ask where this genius was nurtured from. According to an anonymous author from the 16th century, Leonardo's mother is written as per madre nato di buon sangue. On his mother's side, there is good, pure blood. In addition to this information, some point out that she came from somewhere in the East. What could that mean? There is an exciting theory that Leonardo's mother, we have to mention it, and it wouldn't be our channel if we didn't. Caterina, that's right, was initiated into the esoteric knowledge of the Khazars. The word Khazar comes from the Greek Khazaroi, the pure ones. So, Catharism is a Christian Gnostic movement that flourished in southern Europe, especially in northern Italy and southern France between the 12th and 14th centuries. Its followers think a person can return to being a child of God and free themselves from the wheel of birth and death by following the path of initiation. The idea is that the path of birth and death is samsara, which is a cycle of reincarnation in which we are constantly reborn. And those who get out of it are actually those who come to know the triune energy and add the source as an element in everything that is, and actually realize that they themselves are the very Trinity. More or less, this is the secret knowledge summed up. You'll thank me later. However, there is even one more. A much more intriguing theory is that in fact we say it, Leonardo da Vinci's mother, Caterina, comes from a noble Bulgarian family. The story goes that when in 1080 Bulgaria falls entirely under the control of the Eastern Roman Empire, a large part of the Bulgarian aristocratic court goes to Italy. The Samuel family, which moves to the west, settles in central Italy. Their descendants are the Frizinga family, which exists to this day and has a document issued by the Vatican confirming their aristocratic origin from the Samuel family. According to our friend Professor Damian Popristov, who has dedicated years to studying the Bogomil teachings, Leonardo da Vinci's mother, whose intelligence he himself admired, was a devoted Bogomil. And although Leonardo never explicitly says that she was a Bogomil, he does talk about the Gospel of Nicodemus, which is actually the Bogomil Gospel. There is evidence from his notes that Leonardo and his mother, Caterina, were close. Some theories suggest that there is a peculiar aspect of Leonardo's life for that time which may be connected to his mother's origins, namely his vegetarianism. Vegetarianism was a well-known aspect of Bogomil life. Could he have inherited his love for living creatures, curiosity about the world, unique philosophy, and courage to express himself from his mother? Well, yes. Was his mother initiated among the Bogomils or the Cathars? Was she Bulgarian? These are questions we should ask when we talk about Leonardo da Vinci. For some, this may sound like a rather bold statement, but if we look at it from another perspective, it is believed that Leonardo himself also had connections with secret societies and was even part of the Priory of Sion. And some even say that he was its leader. If that's really the case, he was part of the guardians of the highest esoteric knowledge of his time, including the secrets of the Holy Grail. And this is an order directly connected to the Cathars. There is speculation that he was one of the founders of the Rosicrucian movement, although it appeared in the early years of the 17th century. All of them are based on the messages, signs, and multi-layered symbolism left in his works. According to Carlo Vecchi, author of the novel The Smile of Caterina, which is not accidentally named that way, the smiles of the women in Leonardo's works are based precisely on the smile of his mother, including the Gioconda Mona Lisa. Carlo also claims that Caterina is from the Caucasus, based on a document not published until now, hidden in the State Archive of Florence and created only 6 months after the birth of the genius. According to him, Piero da Vinci grants freedom to the slave Caterina, who worked as a servant in his house. And so, according to Carlo, Caterina is the daughter of Prince Jacob from the North Caucasus or from the lands of the Circassians. She was most likely abducted by the Tatars, turned into a slave and taken by sea to Russia. After that, through Byzantium and the Ottoman Empire, she reached Venice, and in Florence she was taken by a man named Donato di Filippo di Silvestro. From Donato's house, Caterina was, let's say, borrowed as a nanny for Maria, the child of Piero da Vinci. For these duties, she received 18 florins, an ancient gold coin, per year. This was considered quite a high price for the time, which was justified by the fact that in practice Caterina was Piero's sexual slave. But at least he paid for it. She was freed from slavery on November 2nd, 1452, or a few months after the birth in April of Sinai. After she became free, she was taken as the wife of a peasant named Antonio Buti, known as a Catabriga, with whom she lived together for 40 years and had 5 more children, 4 girls and 1 boy. In fact, she lives not far from Piero's house, where little Leonardo also spends his first 10 years growing up. An interesting fact, for example, is that young Leonardo asked his math teacher such original questions, that he constantly put his teacher in doubt and difficulty and often confused him. That's how great minds continue to ask confusing questions with the same intensity throughout their lives. But what were Leonardo's motives? In his book, The Creators, A History of Heroes of the Imagination, Pulitzer Prize winner Daniel Boorstin explains what they were not. Unlike Dante, he did not feel passion for a woman. Unlike Giotto, Dante, or Brunelleschi, he also seemed to lack civic loyalty. Nor was he devoted to the Church or Christ. He easily accepted commissions from the Medici, Sforza, Borgia, French kings, popes, and their enemies. He lacks the sensual eloquence of Boccaccio and Chaucer, the boldness of Rabelais, the piety of Dante, and the religious ecstasy of Michelangelo. On the other hand, Leonardo's loyalty, dedication, and passion are directed toward the pure pursuit of truth and beauty. As Freud himself suggests, he turns his passion into curiosity. To turn our passion into curiosity means to always seek the knowledge around us. Let's explore the unknowns with love. We then become eternal and connect with life's eternity. Today we are exploring one of their minds. Northern Apennines, Italy. There in the mountains just outside Florence, the young Leonardo da Vinci spends much of his time studying the mysteries of nature. Because his parents are not married, he is excluded from the prestigious academies attended by many of his contemporaries. I wandered through the fields in search of answers to the things I do not understand. Why are there shells and imprints of corals, plants, and seaweed, things we usually find in the sea, on the mountain peaks? Why does thunder last longer than the event that causes it? And why, at the very moment it is created, does the eye see the lightning but the thunder comes after a while? How do the different circles form around the spot where the surface of the water was struck by a stone? Why can a bird stay in the air? Well, these questions and many other strange phenomena occupied his mind throughout his entire life. He loved to learn, but not in the way most scholars of his time did. They read ancient books in Greek and Latin, but Leonardo didn't know those languages. Instead, he learned by carefully observing the world around him. He observed nature, how things work, and everything he could touch or see. He loved to read books written in Italian, his own language, because he believed you could learn a lot just by observing and doing things yourself. And he wasn't far from the truth. No other Renaissance artist showed as much interest in nature and his surroundings. He thirsts for knowledge. He thirsts for information. He manages to create a mental palace in his mind from knowledge that equals the library of information possessed by the Platonic Academy. All the events important to him, new discoveries and observations he records in his journal, which they say he carried everywhere with him. Michael White, author of Leonardo da Vinci, The Complete Paintings and Drawings, writes, Leonardo's notes are extensive and diverse. They contain his observations, theories, plans, and reflections on various subjects that go beyond the ordinary scope of his work. And John Reynolds, another author, adds, Leonardo's notes are the only place where we can get a direct look into the thought process of one of the greatest minds in human history. They are like a window into Leonardo's genius and his endless love for knowledge and exploration. It is also believed that it was there in the northern Apennines that Leonardo discovered the cave, which he made sure to share with us in his diary. The story is very mysterious and intriguing, the theory is that the events took place sometime around the year 1480. The fact that Leonardo chose to record this incident with the cave, proves that this experience had a significant impact on his psychology. Although the exact location of the cave and the date that Leonardo discovered it remain hidden, unknown, there are many people who believe that it may represent the key to understanding the source of his unique talent and the answer to the mystery of what happened to him during his missing years. That period of his biography actually refers to 1482 to 1486, similar actually to the missing years of Christ. We'll talk about that in one of the upcoming episodes. Could it be that, like another mind from eternity, Nicole from Tesla, Da Vinci had his own way of connecting to the informational field around us, or in other words, to the source? It's only right to ask ourselves this if we want to dive deeper into his mind. And is it possible that he was even trained, guided by other extraterrestrial races? Soon after returning, he writes in his diary about discovering a cave, describing how he stood at the entrance, cautious yet intrigued by what might be inside. Many researchers believe that this cave contained some kind of portals for traveling between time and space, or more precisely for transferring to other parallel realities, which he apparently was ready to see. Because, as many would say, he opens doors or star portals and travels to the past or the future and then returns to the present time, or as he himself has hinted to us. Notice the river water you touch is the last of what has passed and the first of what is yet to come. It's the same with time. Use your right to choose to determine the direction and quality of the river of your life. Of course, it is believed that in this cave, he may have had encounters with extraterrestrial entities, received information, guidance, or even knowledge about the upcoming needs of humanity. We're talking about innovations. In a moment, we'll dive deeper into all the unique creations of Leonardo, but for those of you who don't know, we can say that there are his inventions that not only surpass his time, but literally seem to be made in the likeness of what he may have seen existing in the future of human civilization. Some claim Leonardo's illegitimacy limited him, but if he'd been Piero's legitimate son, he would have had to become a notary, and no one wanted that for Leonardo. In this case, however, he could become whatever he wished. And if you ask me, he hit the nail right on the head. Throughout his entire childhood, Leonardo created many drawings and sketches. He doesn't stop. His father is so impressed by Leonardo's talent that he takes collections of his son's works and presents them to a family friend, and already quite an influential figure in Florence, Andrea del Verrocchio. That's right, the same Verrocchio. Leonardo joins his academy at the age of 15. This apprenticeship is crucial as it provides him with a foundation in a wide range of arts and sciences. It is in Verrocchio's workshop that Leonardo begins to show signs of his extraordinary, remarkable abilities. His early work in Verrocchio's studio, such as his contribution to the Baptism of Christ, already demonstrates his innovative approach and exceptional skill. Andrea del Verrocchio was born in 1435 in Florence. Although he became the official sculptor of the powerful Medici family, Verrocchio was initially trained as a goldsmith and gradually mastered bronze and marble casting in Florence during the 15th century. During the period between 1464 and 1473, Verrocchio was commissioned to create the floor tombstone of Cosimo de' Medici in the Basilica of San Lorenzo, as well as the tomb monuments of Cosimo's sons, Piero and Giovanni. These important and high-ranking connections elevated Verrocchio to a position of influence, and his workshop received commissions from many notable clients, requiring a wide variety of goods. Demand for paintings, sculptures, engravings, and bronze commissions required Leonardo to learn mixing paints, stone carving, bronze casting, drawing, and also use mathematics, engineering, and music. After 6 years of training under Verrocchio, Leonardo finished his schooling in 1472, and the following year he joined the Painters Guild in Florence. However, he continued to work as an assistant in Verrocchio's workshop. During this period, Leonardo created his first independent painting, The Annunciation, made between 1472 and 1475. a painting that is now located in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Between 1474 and 1478, he painted Madonna of the Carnation, also known as Madonna and Child, which is kept in the Alte Pinakothek Gallery in Munich, Germany. An anonymous early biographer, known as Annimo Gadiano, claims that in 1480, Leonardo lives with the Medici and often works in the garden of Piazza San Marco in Florence, where the Medici gather together the Neoplatonic Academy of artists, poets, and philosophers. Yes, that's right. Leonardo da Vinci is a very good friend of the Medici family and does quite a few things for them. Although he was different because he didn't follow the usual way of learning from old books, he was very much like many of the thinkers of his time who wanted to reach high up to the heavens. Leonardo records his thoughts and discoveries in a very personal way, sometimes as little stories of success, showing us that he was always thinking and questioning every little thing in the reality around him. He teaches us that being curious and exploring the world on our own helps us learn and understand better than just listening to others. Leonardo da Vinci captures his thoughts in a unique way, often writing pensieri or reflections that end with moral lessons inspired by philosophers like Plato and Aristotle. Unlike his peers, he rejects the idea of blindly accepting authorities and instead sees personal experience as a source of knowledge. A famous quote of his is that wisdom is the child of experience, advocating for learning through direct observation and, most importantly, practical involvement. We live in a physical reality. It is a collection of actions not by chance derived from the Bulgarian word for verb. That is, our greatest talents and our truest curiosity and creativity are revealed when we take the biggest steps, even if they are small at the beginning. A method actually strongly influenced by Aristotle. In 1495, Lodovico Sforza commissions Leonardo to create his famous fresco The Last Supper. Frescoes, popular during the Renaissance, are wall paintings made with dry pigment applied directly onto wet limestone. Just imagine that. Lodovico wants this fresco to decorate the wall of the dining hall in the Church of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. And he succeeds. The Last Supper takes Leonardo almost 3 years to complete, using many assistants. Well, although this period is not long compared to some other works from the 15th century, Leonardo experiments with a mix of oil paints, which makes the fresco more vulnerable to the damp conditions in the church and contributes to its rapid deterioration. By the mid-15th century, the work was already in poor condition, and the Last Supper has since been restored many times. In 1498, during his stay in Milan, Leonardo worked for Ludovico Sforza as a court engineer. This position involved designing defensive weapons to prepare for a potential French attack. During these turbulent pre-war years, Leonardo also explored his interest in the interaction between mathematics and art, collaborating with the mathematician Luca Pacioli on the Divina Proporzione, or Divine Proportion, in 1496. At the same time, another leading figure of the Renaissance, Michelangelo, born in Caprese, Tuscany, in 1475, was 29 years old while Leonardo was 51. While both were commissioned by Florentine officials to create some of their most famous works, Michelangelo began working on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome, which he completed after 4 years in 1508, and also finished his statue of David in the Piazza della Signoria in 1494. Both geniuses lived and worked in and around Florence during their lives, although their frescoes remained practically unfinished. Michelangelo and Leonardo had their own personal rivalry, so to speak, which often consisted of their opposite characters, but as we know, opposites blend into each other. Michelangelo is outspoken, rough, and not pedantic, while Leonardo is quiet, prudent, and elegant. Their tense relationship leads to frequent criticism, mostly from Michelangelo, who is often caught judging Leonardo for his many unfinished works. Amid the ongoing power struggles between the Milanese and the French, Leonardo moves to live with 20-year-old Francesco Melzi, who remains his close companion and potential lover for the rest of his life. Interestingly, after Leonardo's death, Melzi retains control over many of his journals and artworks, and on September 24, 1513, Leonardo leaves Milan with Melzi and Salai heading to Rome, where he is accommodated in the Belvedere of the Vatican by Giuliano de' Medici, son of Lorenzo de' Medici and brother of the newly elected Pope Leo IX. Many artists traveled to Rome during these years, trying to gain the favor of Pope Leo, including Raffaello and Michelangelo. In 1516, Leonardo, Melzi, and Salai set sail for France. Da Vinci settles in France and becomes the official painter of King Francois VI. Overall, if we look at Leonardo's life, he was always close to some king, always near someone who had great power. Well, that's not a coincidence. In those times, wherever there was power, no matter how foolish some of the rulers were, as we know from history, the great minds were actually there so they could, thanks to their intellect, create and have information about what was going to happen. Actually, they survived precisely because of all this, because they realized, that everything is learned first where the king is, and then it's told at the table, and actually, that's how they managed to predict their moves, where and when, how to escape, and where to go. While in France, Leonardo and Melzi live in Clos, in a place provided by the king. There, Leonardo creates his famous self-portrait, drawn with red chalk, which is currently kept in the Royal Library in Turin, Italy. The drawings are dated to 1512 and depict Leonardo at about 60 years of age. Leonardo has been fascinated by the power of water since he was a child, after witnessing the flooding of the Arno River. This leads him to a greater interest in the destructive power of nature and the potential ability of humans to control it. Although he is limited by his time, having to move constantly between Italy and France depending on the political situation and seeking nobles to support his survival, it is precisely these limitations that allow him to achieve so much in his life. He does everything but waste his time. Now let's take a look at some impressive inventions, as I promised, by Leonardo from the early years of his life. Well, let's start with the ornithopter, the flying machine. This device, inspired by the elegant flights of bats and birds, represents his ambitious dream of human flight. Leonardo designed a machine with huge wings that spanned more than 10 meters and were covered with silk or thin leather to combine lightness with durability. One flows into the other. At the heart of the ornithopter was an intriguing mechanism, very beautiful, which allowed the pilot, positioned centrally and lying face down, to control the wings through a complex system of cables and pulleys. With exceptional engineering insight, Leonardo designed the ornithopter so that the rhythmic and synchronized flapping of the wings would imitate the natural flight of birds, thus creating the necessary lift. Well, this mechanism encourages the pilot to perform vigorous coordinated movements with his arms and legs, turning the dream of flight into a potential reality. Although documented evidence of a successful test flight is lacking, unless the Vatican decides to open all its archives, Leonardo's concept and detailed drawings have left a lasting legacy and admiration, demonstrating his unparalleled innovative spirit and deep understanding of those laws of nature that allow us to interact with each other. The submarine. He developed a submarine concept in the 15th century, a revolutionary idea in navigation and military technology. The project is a waterproof wooden chamber with a round shape, allowing the operator to breathe while submerged underwater. Leonardo's idea was for the submarine to be used for surprise attacks against enemy ships by secretly approaching them underwater. Leonardo also envisioned a method for supplying air inside the submarine, allowing the operator to stay underwater for longer periods. He also developed specialized details, such as leather covers that protect the water inlets and outlets to keep the interior dry. Mechanical lion, a very interesting invention created in 1515, so that's an easy way to remember it. During his stay in France with King Francis I for one of the royal theatrical performances, the king wants an interesting toy in the choir and Leonardo makes it for him. This invention was made to demonstrate his essence, his own genius at the French court, and to amaze and entertain the royal guests with his art and mechanisms. This mechanical lion is capable of moving autonomously, taking several steps forward, after which a compartment with lilies, the symbol of France, is revealed from its chest. This feature symbolizes peace and reverence for the king. The lion was made of metal and wood and had a complex system of gears and mechanisms hidden inside its structure, allowing it to perform exactly these actions. Mechanical knight. Yes, created by Leonardo da Vinci, one of the earliest examples of a robotic automaton, absolutely unique for its time. This fascinating automaton is an anthropomorphic machine that imitates the movements of a person in medieval armor, designed sometime around 1495 in Milan. The mechanical knight could perform various movements, including sitting, standing, and waving its arms, thanks to a complex system of pulleys and wheels. According to descriptions, the robot was operated by a system of hand levers and pedals that activated the movement mechanisms. Incredible, considering the limited technological advancements of the period. It's likely that the fact he studied human anatomy in great detail allowed Leonardo to create such an innovative machine. Made mostly of iron, wood, and leather, this knight demonstrated impressive engineering thought, an absolute precedent for that time. Unfortunately, the complete design of the robot was never recovered, but using several different sketches from Leonardo's notebooks, an attempt was made in 2002 to build a prototype of the robotic knight. Interestingly, the robotic knight was designed without a single unnecessary part, and Da Vinci's designs are used as inspiration for the works being developed today at National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Let's now consider what would have happened if Leonardo had had the opportunity to create something like this back in those times. And he even managed to produce a prototype. What is being done right now that we don't have access to or visibility of? It's good to think about it because it gives us a different perspective and broadens our worldview. Let's assume that actually many of the movies we watch are already outdated. People are already much further ahead. Maybe no idea speaks to the epic ambition of Leonardo's range of inventions better than his design for the ideal city. This project focused not only on one area, but combined Da Vinci's talent as an artist, architect, engineer, and inventor. His idea arose after the plague devastated Milan, killing almost a third of the population. Leonardo wanted to create a city that was more unified, with better communications, services, and sewage to prevent the future spread of such diseases. His ideal city integrated a series of connected canals which would be used for commercial purposes and as a sewage system. The city would have lower and upper parts, with the lower ones being canals for merchants and travelers, and the upper ones being roads for the gentlemen. Due to the nature and scale of this proposed change, the idea was never realized. Armored combat vehicle. While staying in Milan, in 1487 Leonardo designed an armored vehicle that can be considered the ancestor of the modern tank. Incredible, but true. The design was inspired by the shape of a turtle's shell and featured a conical roof, lined with wooden planks reinforced with metal plates and equipped with a ventilation opening at the top. This armored vehicle could move and fire in all directions thanks to a drive system operated by 4 men. The sloped armor provided advantages that, in some respects, even surpassed those of the early tanks from World War I. Leonardo sold the idea to the Duke of Milan, writing to him, I can make armored towers safe and impregnable, which will enter the closed ranks of the enemy with their artillery, and no company of soldiers is so large that they cannot be broken by them. Behind them, our infantry can follow unharmed and without resistance. However, modern analysis of the combat vehicle shows that the transmission system designed by Leonardo does not work due to defects. But some scholars claim that Leonardo did this intentionally because of his moral opposition to war. The great genius is a great genius in all his works. Leonardo da Vinci designed a concept similar to the modern helicopter as early as 1485, envisioning the use of an air screw to provide lift. This screw, which functions like a modern propeller, was supposed to be powered by 4 men turning a crank. Although the technology at the time did not allow the invention to function since people cannot generate enough energy to lift the machine, Leonardo's ideas later inspired Igor Sikorsky in the creation of modern helicopters. In addition to machines for lifting into the air, around 1485, Leonardo drew a design for a mechanism that some consider to be the first parachute in history. The official invention of the parachute is often attributed to Sébastien Lenormand in 1783, but in fact Da Vinci came up with the design almost 300 years earlier. His skill as an artist allowed him to sketch and plan his inventions and engineering ideas in great detail. And many of his diagrams and drawings are so clear that we can use them to build working copies of his inventions today. Leonardo sketched an image of a parachute that isn't rounded as we're used to seeing, but is shaped like a pyramid and framed with wood. Because of this difference in design, many people doubt that Leonardo's parachute would work at all, since it was never actually built or tested by him. Yes, however, in June 2000, a man named Adrian Nicholas proved that everyone was wrong. From a hot air balloon at an altitude of 3,000 meters, he jumped towards the ground with a parachute designed according to Leonardo's plans. The parachute was constructed entirely with materials that would have been available at the end of the 15th century. Nichols not only survives the test, but he also claims that the triangular design has a smoother descent than modern parachutes. Hallelujah! In addition to the helicopter and his other flying machines, Leonardo also designed a parachute. He had a much deeper understanding of scientific principles than we would expect from a man living in the 15th century. And it's really interesting to think about, how did he acquire this knowledge and understanding of the universe? The machine gun. Leonardo studied existing war instruments and created new weapon designs. He noticed a fatal flaw in the weapons of his time. It took them too long to reload. That's why he invented the 33-barrel carriage, which rotates, allowing for staggered reloading in groups of 11. This weapon is a precursor to the modern machine gun, and its design was tested on the Discovery Channel, and the results look exceptional with thinness all around it. A telescope design, and now it's already starting to get confusing. Known for his unquenchable passion for exploring the universe, he often gazes at the starry sky, just like us, searching for inspiration or answers to some of the oldest questions. Are we alone? Where are we going? Where do we come from? One of his lesser-known projects is the development of a prototype telescope designed to magnify the image of the moon. In his notes, he describes the specifications of the glass needed to achieve the correct magnification, a detail that highlights his precise approach to his scientific interests. Well, although Leonardo is not recognized for significant contributions to astronomy, and many of his ideas turned out to be wrong or inaccurate over time, presenting the idea of the telescope a full 100 years before Galileo Galilei reveals his pioneering spirit, a pioneering vision. This early design of a telescope intended to magnify the moon and observe the night sky testifies to his connection and endless interest in the vast cosmos. A diving suit? In 1500, while in Venice, the great inventor was tasked with creating military equipment to protect the city. Among his most remarkable projects from this period is the revolutionary diving suit, designed to allow people to secretly approach enemy ships underwater. This diving suit, made of leather, was complemented by a face mask, and underwater breathing was provided through an innovative system. Air reaches the diver through long reed tubes, which are reinforced with metal to withstand sea pressure and are attached to a cork buoy on the surface. Even more interesting is that Leonardo also envisioned methods for descending and ascending in the water using a balloon, as well as a bottle for urination to ensure the diver's comfort during longer missions. The interesting thing here, the scandalous part as we would say in our language, is precisely the development of the underwater breathing system. Leonardo theorized that a person should not exhale into the air that they are going to inhale. That's why he included an additional tube through which only fresh air from the surface could be received. So, besides being an artist, Leonardo was also an anatomist who tried to draw, categorize, and understand every part and detail of the human body. He was an architect and designed large cities and buildings that were revolutionary for his time. He was also an astronomer and studied the night sky, creating designs for one of the first telescopes. He was a botanist who studied and documented plants, as well as a cartographer, creating some of the first modern detailed navigation maps. Leonardo was a geologist, a hydrodynamicist, as well as a mathematician and a musician. What hasn't he actually been? So the question stays, how? Well, it's possible. This one. An enigmatic man with great potential and many talents to have been so far ahead of his time, the connection to the information field, his ability to draw ideas guided by the needs he observes in the environment around him, and maybe a little more intervention from alien races. Do you notice that we're not talking that much about the artist part of Leonardo? Yes, we'll pay attention to that aspect too, but you see, he's far more than what he's usually described as. As much as he's talked about in the textbooks, you could even say that for him, art was simply a way to satisfy his curiosity and his love for this beautiful world we live in, as well as to weave everything together that he learned about the world in the meantime, and to leave eternal encoded messages that still whisper mysteries to this day. He says the following to his students: study the science of art. Study the art of science. Develop your senses, especially learn how to see. Realize that everything is connected to everything else. In total, Leonardo left behind about 20 completed paintings, as well as over 6,000 sketches, drawings, and unfinished works. However, the exact number of all his artistic works is difficult to determine due to the many lost and unfinished pieces. Back in the distant year of 1489, Lodovico Sforza asked Leonardo da Vinci to create a magnificent bronze horse statue in honor of his father Francesco. The idea was bold and ambitious, but the storms of war prevented the completion of the project due to a shortage of bronze. During the same period, in the magnetic atmosphere of Milan, Leonardo took a new student under his wing, Giovanni Giacomo di Pietro Caprotti. He took him in at the age of 10 on June 22, 1490, and soon gave him the nickname Salai, or Little Devil, because of his thieving tendencies and love for mischief. Salai became Leonardo's student and his inseparable companion for the next 30 years. Although many historians suggest that a romantic relationship developed between the two, the views on sexuality at that time were fundamentally different from today's. Even though open homosexuality was forbidden by the Church, among the artists and patrons of the Renaissance, freer forms of expression were often allowed and even encouraged, based precisely on the ancient Greek and Roman traditions regarding the relationships between master and apprentice. It's intriguing that after Leonardo died, Salai didn't leave empty-handed. The great master included his loyal companion in his will, granting him a house and land in Milan, as well as several valuable works of art. Thus, even after his death, Leonardo continued to leave his mark on the lives of those closest to him. The personal life of Leonardo da Vinci, especially his romantic relationships, remains mostly a mystery due to the limited personal information he left behind. This mind, throughout his life, he never married, and it is not known whether he had any children. His closest relationships were mainly with students and colleagues. His most famous relationships with students were with Gian Giacomo Caprotti, also known as Salai, and Francesco Melzi. Francesco Melzi is described as having more of a father-son relationship with him, and Melzi was with Leonardo until his death and inherited his notes and works, which shows the deep trust and connection between them. Although there is much speculation, including theories about various male and female relationships, solid evidence is scarce, which leaves much of Leonardo's personal life based on assumptions and hypotheses. He himself is a big assumption and hypothesis. His great genius leaves so many questions that one might wonder how he even existed together with all that trouble, which we might call dark for those times. In any case, we can say that in Leonardo's world, the constant curiosity for knowledge and art, for science, dominates over his personal romantic preferences. It's interesting how, despite his enormous variety of talents and achievements, Leonardo da Vinci is rarely mentioned as a sculptor. His exceptional technique in this field is known, but few of his sculptural projects were completed. For example, the project for the giant bronze statue of the horse, or cavallo. Another example is Saint John the Baptist, a commission for a portal in Milan, which also remains unfinished, although the preserved fragments demonstrate his impressive technique. We even know that he never fully completed the Last Supper. At the height of his career, while working on the Last Supper, Leonardo spent days on the high scaffolding in Santa Maria delle Grazie. From dawn till dusk, he poured his talent onto the wall, and then, without any warning, he would suddenly leave his work unfinished for the day. Just like that, he'd say, "All right, see you, that's enough for today." However, this behavior is not at all appreciated by the chief priest of the church, who finds nothing amusing about the artist's unexpected breaks. Vasari describes how the priest constantly harassed Leonardo with persistent attempts to make him finish the Last Supper, not understanding why he would often spend half a day lost in thought instead of working tirelessly like the gardeners. He was getting into the zone, which is why he could leave those messages. The situation escalated to the point where the irritated priest complained to the Duke, who met with Leonardo to learn more about his working methods. But Leonardo, with his persuasive mind and charisma, managed to convince the Duke of the idea that even the greatest minds can sometimes achieve more by working less. As Freud himself says, and indeed throughout his life, the great Leonardo remained much like a child. Even in his mature years, he continued to play. This is one of the reasons his contemporaries perceived him as strange and incomprehensible. On one hand, he is serious in his determination and direction to never stop searching, but on the other, he is always like a child, curious and endlessly enthusiastic. His work in the field of anatomy is extremely thorough, including dissections of horses, cows, pigs, and many other animals. Leonardo notes how a frog's legs, a bear's paws, a lion's eyes, and an owl's eyelids resemble human body parts. Hello! It's quite clear that his pursuits go far beyond what is required for an artist to acquire the necessary knowledge for creating an accurate image. Should we still call him just an artist? Do we still see him only as that genius who painted those pictures? But isn't it true that all great minds throughout history stand out because they do more than what is expected of them? Always. A lot? More. Much, much more. Leonardo studies the human body as a complete system of interconnected elements, just like our universe. That is, he was very well acquainted not only with the principles and laws of the universe, but also with the secret of their application. Here is how he describes it himself, for those of you who don't believe me. I will talk about the functions of each part in every possible direction, and I will present to your attention a description of the overall form and essence of man. Leonardo calls his studies of anatomy cosmografica del minor mondo, cosmography of the microcosm. His understanding of the natural proportions of the body is reflected in his studies in the fields of architecture and urban planning. As above, so below, Michael Geop explains in one of his books how to think like Leonardo. Once the maestro stayed with a dying man to accompany him to his peaceful and poor painless death. Seconds after the man passed away, Leonardo began the autopsy. Seconds! Because he was fascinated by the anatomy of such a peaceful death. Leonardo goes to extremes in his search for truth and his desire to understand the essence of natural systems. The anatomical studies he conducted on the sexual act, the evenings he organized especially for deformed and grotesque people, the remarkably composed sketch of the hanging of Vandanelli, the phantasmagorical war machines, all of this shows his intuitive understanding that in order for a person to comprehend a system, he must study it or imagine it under extreme circumstances. That is, if we study or accept the other polarity, actually, I allow myself to make an addition and a correction. Are these extremes? Or two polarities? Two halves of the same thing? The same focus of study? The insight into the body is at the core of his metaphor about Earth as a living system. I emphasize we're already getting into the deep part of things. The ancients called man the microcosm, and the word was certainly well chosen because just like man, the body of the earth is made up of earth, water, air, and fire. Just as a person's bones provide support and a framework for the flesh, so too does the earth have rocks that support the soil. Just as a person carries within himself a lake of blood in which the lungs expand and contract as they breathe, so too does the body of the earth have, which, following the rhythm of the cosmic breath, increases every 6 hours and then recedes. Just as the veins branch out from the lake of blood and spread throughout the human body, in the same way the ocean fills the body of the earth with countless veins of water. Leonardo was 500 years ahead of physicist David Bohm's theory of the holographic universe, according to which the genetic code of the universe is contained in every atom, just as the DNA spiral contains all the genetic information for each individual. Our own personal barakat. David Bohm writes the following: everything is contained in everything else. 5 centuries before that, Leonardo noted, everything comes from everything. Everything is made from everything, and everything returns to everything. Good day. Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is perhaps one of the most famous images symbolizing the Renaissance and the quest for human knowledge and perfection. This famous drawing was created around 1490, and at first glance we see a male figure in 2 overlapping positions. One has arms and legs spread, the other has them together. The figure is simultaneously inscribed in a square and a circle, which symbolizes the Renaissance belief in the harmony between the human body and the cosmos. Leonardo was inspired by the works of the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, who in his treatises states that the ideal proportions in architecture should imitate those of the human body. Why is that? Well, Leonardo experimented with this idea, which led to the creation of this very famous drawing. The Vitruvian Man perfectly demonstrates the microcosm concept, showing the human body as a miniature reflection of the universe. After all, Hermes Trismegistus didn't write by accident, as above, so below, as below, so above. The square stands for the material world, while the circle signifies the divine and eternal. Drawn somewhere around 1490, probably the most famous image of all time, and yet for more than 5 centuries no one has noticed that it encodes astonishing knowledge. About what? About the Great Pyramid of Giza? Yes, that's right, about the Great Pyramid of Giza. Leonardo's drawing a Renaissance Florence, Italy, Giza and the pyramids. Surprise. Robert Grant shows that the angle from the navel to the top corner of the square exactly matches the angle of the side slope of the pyramid. Cryptologist Alan Green adds through his research on Da Vinci's masterpiece with the same mathematical rigor and discovers that when you inscribe a circle in Da Vinci's square and raise that circle so its center coincides with the center of the Vitruvian man's circle, 6 perfect cross-sections of the pyramid are revealed at the navel, along with the exact geometric correspondence of the relationship between the Earth and the Moon with the pyramid. Could the Vitruvian man actually be a concealed diagram of the Great Pyramid of Giza? What if this famous image, celebrated for its perfect human proportions, hides profound thematic secrets connecting Renaissance Italy with ancient Egypt? Is there any evidence that Da Vinci ever visited Egypt? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Please wait for a bit. If we assume that the Vitruvian man can encode the geometry of the Great Pyramid, then we need to stop and think very carefully and ask what Leonardo wanted to convey to future generations. His masterpiece is more than just a treatise on human proportions, and it is. A connection with the ancient world offers them a deeper understanding of the universe. Is it possible that the Vitruvian man actually represents a profound hint that humanity itself reflects cosmic and ancient architectural wisdom? What deeper revelations about our place in the cosmos can we uncover by deciphering Leonardo's precise mathematical clues? The historical whispers from Leonardo's lost years suggest that he may have traveled far beyond the borders of Italy, drawing inspiration from the very heart of Egypt. His detailed descriptions of the pyramid's structure and cosmic alignments are so precise that they could only be so well angled if observed firsthand. No way! There are 4 years, if we follow the traditional biography, that are missing from Leonardo's life. He is considered one of the most famous people of his time. Just to clarify, it's not a coincidence, this is the first episode of Minds from Eternity. Most of his life was actually recorded by chroniclers. That was their job, that's what they did, except for those 4 years. Very strange, isn't it? Is it? During that time, he wasn't in Cairo, exploring the geometric secrets of the pyramids firsthand. All of this, I know, challenges our conventional understanding of one of the greatest mysteries in art and architecture, and history overall. However, the researcher and mathematician Robert Grant often makes expeditions to Egypt and shares his insightful discoveries with us. I found this book, it's about this big, it literally weighs 27 kilograms. It's called the Codex Atlanticus. The book contains all of Da Vinci's notes. I even read the autobiography of Walter Isaacson, and there were 4 years of Da Vinci's life that are missing from history. 1482, 1486, I was trying to find out where he went then. There was a strange reference I found on the internet saying something about the idea that Da Vinci went into a cave. I found it really interesting. He finds a letter in the Codex Atlanticus which is written as a draft, titled Dodevit, a gift to the Sultan of Cairo, Babylon. Okay, wait a moment. Leonardo is writing a letter to someone who serves the Sultan in Cairo, and historians believe that all of this is fiction. That doesn't make any sense. That's how I started to dig deeper. Actually, the Greek name for the Giza plateau is Ros Tau. Tau is in the Greek alphabet and Taurus means bull. And literally, Ros Tau backwards is Taurus, and that's where the word comes from. Rosenkreuz comes from, because Tau is a reference, that's the letter T. Also a reference to the cross, right? So the cross and the rose. Rosenkreuz, right? Now, Da Vinci was also a Rosenkreuzer. If you look on the official website of the Rosenkreuzers, you'll find that they have a reference to him. They accept him as one of their own, from the Renaissance founders to be precise. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm looking at the letter and I see that he gives a very detailed description of his journey to Egypt. And I'm like, what the hell? This isn't in any other book about Da Vinci. And yet here it is, in a letter, undoubtedly written in his own hand. Conclusion. Obviously, Leonardo. Exodus, Egypt. In the heart of Milan, within the sacred walls of Santa Maria delle Grazie, lies one of the greatest enigmas of art, the Last Supper. This iconic fresco has captivated both scholars and enthusiasts for centuries. But why does this painting, fixed immovably to the walls, evoke such fascination in everyone? What secrets does it hold beyond its obvious religious narrative? Leonardo's masterpiece is proof of his genius, yet it has sparked endless debates and theories. Is this simply a depiction of Christ announcing his betrayal, or is there more to the scene than meets the eye? Leonardo's cipher. Now, allow me for a second to immerse you in a particular passage, yes, I agree, written by Dan Brown as part of the novel The Da Vinci Code. Without demanding or imposing historical accuracy, of course, we're just examining and adding it as a point of view. Sophie, curious about the Grail being a woman, begins talking with Teabing. Didn't you say you have a clue about the woman you claim is the Holy Grail? Sophie asked. Yes, but I wasn't the one who declared her the Grail, Christ himself did, Teabing replied, as he pointed to the reproduction of the Last Supper hanging on the wall. Teabing questions the obvious. 13 men in the painting? Maybe they're not all men after all. When looked at closely, the figure next to Christ, who is usually assumed to be John, has features characteristic of a woman. They're all men, Sophie confirmed. And who is sitting in the place of honor to the right of the Lord? Asked Teabing. Sophie carefully examined the figure immediately to the right of Jesus and was suddenly filled with amazement. The figure really did have long red hair, delicate folded hands, and slightly rounded breasts. There was no doubt this was a woman. "It's a woman!" she exclaimed as Teabing laughed. Surprise, surprise. Believe me, this is not a mistake. Leonardo was a master at depicting the differences between the sexes, Teabing laughs. Who is this woman, she asked. That, my dear. Well, Maria? Magdalena returned from Teabing. Langdon adds that in the early centuries, many texts describing the lives of Jesus and Maria as ordinary people were excluded from the Bible. Unfortunately for the early editors, one particularly disturbing earthly theme appeared in all the Gospels. Maria, he paused for a moment, more specifically, your marriage to Jesus Christ. Excuse me? Sophie shot a glance at Langdon, then turned back to Teabing. That's a historical fact, and Leonardo da Vinci definitely knew it. Teabing stated and added that the Last Supper shows the viewer that Jesus and Mary were a couple. Teabing's revelations continue to shake Sophie, who now sees the figure next to Jesus in a completely different light. The composition of the painting depicts Jesus and Mary as mirror images, creating visual harmony and symbolism that is much deeper than initially assumed. Teabing points out that the two are even dressed in complementary colors, red and blue, representing the elements of yin and yang. Notice that Jesus and his bride seem to be touching their hips and leaning away from each other as if to form this clearly defined negative space between them. This shape, which Sophie immediately recognizes as the symbol V in the center of the painting, represents not only the Grail but also the female womb, further reinforcing the idea of Mary as the Grail. And finally, if you look at Jesus and as compositional elements rather than as people, you'll notice yet another obvious sign. Teabing adds to the mystery with the final element of the puzzle, the letter from the alphabet. At this moment, in the middle of the painting, a huge perfectly shaped letter M is unmistakably outlined. This apparent doubt raises more questions about the true meaning of Leonardo's work. M could mean matrimonio, which means union, marriage. And of course, the obvious one, Maria. Teabing found a huge tome and pulled it toward himself. And then he says the Gospel of Philip is always a good place to start. And what does it say there? Mary Magdalene was the companion of the Savior. Christ loved her more than all the disciples and often kissed her on the mouth. The other disciples were offended and voiced their disapproval. They asked him, "Why do you love her more than all of us?" The Savior answered and said to them, "Why don't I love you like I love her?" When the blind and the seeing are together in darkness, they are no different from each other. When the light comes, then the one who can see will see the light, and the one who is blind will remain in darkness. The researcher Robert Grant says, "This is really incredible. I then noticed a bull and a cow painted on the wall in the Last Supper. I noticed an eye on the back wall, and all these symbols are unfolding before me. I'm posting all these things while I'm still in Egypt with a group of 50 people, and I'm posting it in real time as I'm receiving it. I'm asking people, do you know what you're seeing? I'm asking people to help me. Do you see anything more in this?" And it was really amazing to watch people decipher this mystery on their own. That was really good. And then I think, oh God, what if we can see these things now and use them as a cipher for the king's chamber? What can we find when we actually go in there? To decipher Da Vinci's paintings, overlaying their mirror image is often used, because that's the technique he used 90% of the time with his notes. That's why when Maria's image is moved to the other side of Jesus, we see how perfectly the figure leans on his shoulder, forming a beautiful unity. Another important question that Leonardo's version puts on the table is the fact that there are no halos, and instead the figures are depicted as completely ordinary people. According to some researchers, the arrangement of the hands and the loaves on the table may represent a musical sequence. This theory was popularized by the Italian musician and computer analyst Giovanni Maria Palla in 2007. The truth is that we can contemplate this masterpiece for a very long time, finding more and more profound insights and encoded messages. That's why we'll just add one more interesting reference and stop here. However, you can find more details in the other episodes we've made about Leonardo in the hidden reality. Aren't there thousands of pyramids worldwide? Some of the most impressive ones are in Mexico, Bosnia, Egypt, Peru, Indonesia, Italy, Sudan, China. Pyramids are not just Egyptian. It's clear they are of great importance and are connected to the stars. It's clear, connected to consciousness and our ancient past. It's clear they are perfectly constructed in alignment with each other and with the Earth's ley lines. There are many ancient monuments all over the planet that seem to form a pattern. Not known to us, but a perfectly structured pattern. It has been established that there is a circle 25,000 miles long that passes directly through many of the most significant sites on the surface. In this regard, the windows from the Last Supper, listen carefully, they match perfectly with the openings of the pyramids in Mexico, Egypt, and Indonesia. Complete silence. In 1502, Leonardo turns his attention away from the sublime creation of divine femininity to accept the position of chief engineer in the service of the notorious commander of the papal armies, Cesare Borgia. Over the next year, he travels extensively and creates 6 remarkably accurate maps of central Italy for his new patron. Even with Leonardo's paintings and inventions, Cesare fails on the battlefield. During this time, however, Machiavelli becomes friends with Leonardo, and this friendship paves the way for the maestro to receive an important commission from the Signoria of Florence after his return in April 1503. While working on the Battle of Anghiari, Leonardo is also painting a portrait. A portrait that will go down in history as the most famous but also the most mysterious painting. Obsessed with every detail for what will be the last 16 years of his life, even though at first glance it is just a portrait, the painting has dimensions and mysteries that still remain unexplained. That's right, Mona Lisa. Painted in the early 16th century, her mysterious smile and skillful technique have fascinated explorers, rulers, and creators for centuries. Of course, the mysteriousness of this lady is so captivating for everyone that when a person looks at this painting, they sink in and disappear somewhere into infinity, searching in their mind for answers about what gives this seemingly simple painting such captivating depth. What is it about Mona Lisa that managed to so strongly consume the last years of Leonardo's life? And why would this genius devote so much of his time to a single portrait measuring 53 by 77 centimeters? Is it possible that this is precisely because the person depicted was important to Leonardo, or rather because of the knowledge embedded in the portrait? The name Mona Lisa was given by Giorgio Vasari in the biography of Leonardo da Vinci, written and published 31 years after his death. In it, he identifies the lady posing as Lisa. And Mona is a common form of address in Italian, representing a shortening of the word Madonna, which means my lady, equivalent to the French Madame. For a long time, it was believed that Mona Lisa depicts Lisa del Giocondo, the wife of the wealthy Florentine merchant Francesco Deo. Deo Giocondo, who is believed to have commissioned it in honor of the birth of their second son. However, the painting is also known by another title, La Gioconda, which is the feminine form of the surname Giocondo. Gioco means game. Giocare means to play. That's where Djokovic comes from, if you think about it. And if we look at it from this angle, La Gioconda carries the meaning of the playful one. And if we look closely at the smile, it's exactly like that, inviting, mysterious, and slightly playful. And as Leonardo himself says, there are three kinds of people. Some see, others see when they are shown, and the third simply do not see. Many assume that the model could be Leonardo himself in a female form. If we compare the facial features of Mona Lisa with those of Leonardo, the identical proportions and physical resemblance could be due either to the transformation from a male to a female image, which is the more popular version, or to a purely familial connection between mother and son. It is known that Anta Gioconda might actually be Caterina. According to another theory, the portrait is not dedicated to a woman, but to a man, or more precisely, to the already mentioned Salai. Although Salai is described as unreliable and prone to stealing from Leonardo, he remains an important figure in his life and legacy, as he is believed to have inspired some of the artist's most famous works, such as the painting St. John the Baptist. But what's even more interesting, I'll tell you right away, one of the most famous features of the Mona Lisa is her smile. Scientists suggest that Leonardo used a technique called sfumato, which allows the smile to appear different depending on the angle from which the painting is viewed. This smile is often described as lively because of the way it changes. In 2010, the Italian art historian Silvano Vincetti presented scientific findings that, so to speak, sparked public attention. They're invisible to the eye and painted over. Written in black over green-brown are the letters L and V in the right pupil. Obviously, these are the initials of Leonardo, but what's in the left pupil is much more interesting. He says that these are the letters B or S, or possibly the initials C and E, were noticeable, which could be a vital clue for identifying the model who stood before the Renaissance genius. The back of the painting shows the numbers 104. The fourth number is erased, which suggests that he may have painted it while he was still in Milan in 1490, using as a model a woman from the court of Ludovico Sforza, namely the Duke's mistress Cecilia Gallerani, who is also the woman in the portrait Lady with an Ermine, which Leonardo painted in 1489 to 90. Now besides the letters, the investigators find two more symbols, 7 and 2, hidden under one of the arches of the bridge in the landscape. The landscape in the painting has sparked debate, with some scholars calling it imaginary and others saying it shows the Tuscan countryside. Seeking answers about the number's meaning and possible real location, the investigators developed new hypotheses. According to the art history expert Carla Glory, the scene in the painting most likely takes place in northern Italy, and the road and bridge that can be seen belong to the small town of Bobbio in the Emilia-Romagna region. It's very interesting that the bridge was swept away by the Trebbia River during a flood in 1472. Probably, Leonardo added the number 72 under the bridge to record the devastating flood of the Trebbia River, and thus allowed the location to be identified, explains Carla. And could this give us better clues about who is actually depicted? According to Carla, it's possible that not Lisa del Giocondo from Florence, but Bianca Giovanna Sforza, the daughter of Ludovico Sforza, posed for Da Vinci. She explains that at that time Sforza controlled Bobbio, and like many other artists and scholars, Da Vinci probably visited the famous library in the town. And if we add the mirrored reflection of the Mona Lisa, we have grounds for something more, a hint at contact with other civilizations. The next time you see the Mona Lisa anywhere, take a closer look and just observe. Who knows? Maybe you will be the next ones to uncover Leonardo's next mystery. Throughout history, many cultures worldwide have used psychotropic substances to expand consciousness and access hidden knowledge. Substances such as hallucinogens, psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, peyote, and even plant-derived alkaloids have played a central role in ritual and healing practices. It is believed that when psychotropic substances are consumed, the pineal gland, also known as the third eye, is activated, stimulating the production of dimethyltryptamine, a substance thought to play a role in dreams and mystical experiences. Such states can allow an individual to see beyond ordinary perceptions and access the informational field where they can gain knowledge beyond human experience. Historical figures such as shamans and healers have used these substances to guide, heal, or predict the future of their communities. There are suggestions that one of the minds of eternity, Leonardo da Vinci, also had access to and used such substances to expand his knowledge and creativity. His ability to visualize complex machines, anatomical structures, and architectural marvels can be viewed through the prism of otherworldly information. These suggestions are based on the fact that Da Vinci had in-depth knowledge of plants and their effects on the human body, as well as their impact on the brain. Also on the idea that he was a man of action, and it is highly likely that he tested some of the plants while getting to know them. You remember Carlos Castaneda and his stories about the teachings of Don Juan? There too, through the use of ancient psychotropic substances, deeper worlds are reached by expanding perception and consciousness. And yet, the evidence for this is far too little. But did Leonardo use the power of psychotropic plants to look ahead and draw information from the very source to receive information? But more importantly, he knew how to apply it flawlessly. In 1512, Maximilian, the son of Lodovico, drove the French out of Milan and briefly established his own rule, only to be overthrown in turn. Leonardo fled to Rome, where he sought the patronage of Leodix, the new Medici Pope, whose brother arranged for him to receive a stipend and shelter in the Vatican. Although the Pope is an art lover, Leonardo finds that he is too busy with the commissions he has already given to Michelangelo and Raphael, and has no time to pay attention to the 60-year-old Da Vinci. During this period, Leonardo rarely picks up the brush and focuses on his research in anatomy, optics, and geometry. Still, he meets the young Raphael and has a great influence on him. The indifferent support that Leonardo receives from the Vatican ends with the death of his sponsor in 1500. As he himself notes before leaving Rome, "The Medici made me and they destroyed me as well." Like most of his life, his final days are also shrouded in mystery. In one place, Leonardo writes, "Just as a well-spent day brings blessed sleep, so a well-lived life brings a blessed death." Elsewhere, he notes that the soul parts from the body with great reluctance, and its pain and suffering are not without reason. Leonardo da Vinci died at the age of 67 on May 2, 1519. Vasari claims that in his final days he was filled with remorse and apologized to God and people for leaving so many things unfinished. Shortly before the end, Leonardo wrote something else as well. I will continue, and I never get tired of being helpful. Vasari describes how Leonardo, while dying in the arms of the French king, observed and described with scientific terminology what was happening in the human body and what he was feeling. And the author of the book, How to Think Like Leonardo, Michael Gelb, adds by sharing, the life of Leonardo da Vinci is like a mysterious tapestry woven from paradoxes and colored with irony. No one has ever tried to do so much in so many fields, and yet many of his works remain unfinished. He never finished The Last Supper, The Battle of Anghiari, or The Sforza Horse. Today, only 17 of his paintings have survived, and many of them are incomplete. Although his notebooks contain incredible observations, he never organizes and publishes them, as was his original intention. Researchers have suggested various social and political, economic and psychosexual explanations for why Da Vinci left so many of his works unfinished. However, Professor Maurice Philipson quite aptly comments that this is like criticizing Columbus for not discovering India. Philipson and many like him seem to agree on one thing, that more important than all his specific achievements is the example he leaves us. Leonardo offers the ultimate inspiration to try to expand our own horizons, to become like children, which, by the way, is what Jesus says. Never to lose our curiosity and to be curious, that is, to ask everything around us with love, our entire environment, while changing what is within us. We light a new torch from our curiosity and once again turn to others. And yet Leonardo sadly concludes that the ordinary person looks without seeing. He listens without hearing. To Kosovo, without feeling. Without tasting. Moves without physical awareness. Breathes in without paying attention to the smells and scents. And speaks without thinking. Hundreds of years later, his judgment can be interpreted as an invitation to improve our own networks, and along with that, our consciousness, our abilities, and our direction toward building a more aware and beautiful world. I woke up only to see that the rest of the world was still asleep. If you discover from your own experience that something is a fact and it contradicts what some authority has written, then you should reject the authority and base your reasoning on your own discovery. And finally, my favorite quote by Leonardo, which always accompanies me, and I return to it whenever I need a new dose of inspiration. Once you have flown, you will always walk with your eyes turned toward the sky, because you have been there, and there you will always long to return. And we, my dear friends, we're all one big family. This is also the first episode of Minds from Eternity. Besides, it's quite long. Nothingness comes first. Let's begin. I think during the day,